Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's program. At this time, all participants are in listen-only mode. Later, you will have the opportunity to ask questions during the question and answer session. It is now my pleasure to turn the conference over to Mr. Kevin Vogel. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our Tune In Tuesdays. This is an ongoing series that will be running all the way through the summer. We have 7 more scheduled, which we'll talk about later in the presentation. I also have Bill Phelps, our CIO from Champion Solutions Group, on the phone just to help answer any questions and also to add a little bit of input. How you doing today? Thanks, Bill. All right, we're going to walk through the agenda here today. We're going to talk about, obviously, disaster recovery, the process. We're going to talk about threat assessment and how it plays into our plans. Departmental impact analysis, which you're going to find out is an essential part of doing a disaster recovery process. A communications plan before, during, and after a disaster. And then we're also going to talk about business continuance trends in the industry, things that are happening out there, the solution options that we have, and then best practices for an enterprise class business continuance solution. So as you could see, Champion Solutions Group, we're a 30-year-old solutions provider. We're located down here in sunny South Florida, and I can say it's sunny today, but as you probably know, we're in the hurricane capital of the world, so that, disaster and business continuance is an ongoing project for us almost year-round. We have 22 offices in 11 states up and down the East Coast. So it's really important that we give those offices and those employees access to our resources, no matter if South Florida is having a problem or not. We have declared a disaster here 3 times in the last 5 years. Our disasters are usually hurricanes, but a lot of our customers have things like floods. Fire obviously can happen anywhere, snowstorms, power outages, those type of things. So disaster recovery plans, we're going to talk a lot, and you'll see a lot in our slides about hurricanes, but you can really substitute almost any type of disaster for those. And as you can see, we've had this plan in place for a while, and we have over 500 active customers that we help design disaster recovery plans for. So let's talk about the 3 times that Champion has had to declare disasters. You can see this was Hurricane Jeanne back in 2004, which was the deadliest hurricane that year. As you can see, it swept right across the Florida Peninsula, just north of us. So, even though we didn't get a direct hit, we got some of those really strong winds from the outer bands, and even though the eye of the hurricane didn't go directly over us, we had to be ready and had to actually declare a disaster and do the things that's part of our plan. After that, then Francis, just a few days later, actually came across, in fact, I think it was a few weeks later, but actually came across from the same spot within 90 miles. It actually hit land just south of Stuart, Florida. So right after we actually got done with the first one, actually moved everything back over into a production mode, we were off again and now declaring another disaster, having to move things back into a disaster recovery solution. And then our third one was Hurricane Wilma. And this one kind of caught us by surprise, because if you look at the path of the hurricane, as you can see, most of ours come from the east heading west. This one actually went past us into the Gulf of Mexico and then came back and hit us on the backside, which kind of, threw us off there. We didn't have as much notice as we've had, for the other ones. So we actually had to make sure we had moved everything really quickly, and it was a very, very strong storm that hit us. Now, like I said, whether this is a hurricane like we have, whether it's a snowstorm where you get some type of notification, those types are real easy, well, compared to, for instance, getting a fire or getting a flood or a power outage that comes out of nowhere. Those are different types of disasters, but really the same plan, as long as the plan is flexible and is part of your day-to-day operations. You shouldn't have a problem, and I think you'll see that with the way we laid things out today. And then, we always have to look forward into the 2010 season for hurricanes. So we're always following what they're predicting. And as you can see, if you just look at the bottom, there's a 64% chance of at least one major hurricane making landfall in the U.S. And, you know, the thing is, with us being in South Florida, a very high percentage of that 64% is going to fall into our laps here in South Florida. So we have to be prepared. Just like in the winter time when snowstorms hit, you guys have to be prepared, or in the rainy season, if you're in, you know, Kentucky or Tennessee or any of these places that, you know, have a tendency to flood, you have to be ready for those things also. So what we're going to talk about here is, from a business continuance plan, we have to have things that we do before the threat is ever even around. So you can see we have a threat assessment that has to be done prior to any of our business plans for business continuance. We also have to look at how it's going to affect our departments inside of Champion, whether it be our sales, whether it be our marketing, our HR, or any of those type of things. We also have to have a project plan in place. And the funny thing is, it's not just for the people that live in Boca. We have to take into account that all of our people out in the field know what our business continuance plan is and can then operate inside of it. So as you can see, not only during our whatever it is, our threat or our disaster, we have to have a communication plan that's flexible enough to make sure that all of our employees out in the field know exactly what they need to do, know who they need to call, what resources they'll have available, what resources won't be available during a disaster, and all of those things have to be put in place prior to any of these things happening. And then once, obviously, a disaster hits, we have to make some decisions, and we have to have a timeline of which to make those decisions, who needs to be called, who needs to be involved. And I'm not just talking about our employees, but we also have to call people like, for instance, our bank. What if this disaster is happening while we have to meet payroll? Well, we got to make sure that the bank knows to move the funds, just in case we're out of communication between ourselves and the bank at that period of time. You know, our employees all over the country have to make sure that they get paid and, you know, have their money in the bank no matter what's happening down here in South Florida. We also have to maybe contact our insurance company just to make sure that all of our insurance is up to date, all of it's, on file, that we have current pictures of the building on file and so on. So all these things have to be put in place prior to, the disaster actually hitting. So that's part of our decision timeline, and you'll see more about that as we walk through this presentation. And then, obviously, the communication plan during it is one of the most important things, letting our employees know when we're declaring disaster, when we're failing over to our disaster recovery plan, and so on. And then one thing that a lot of people don't take into effect is what happens after the disaster is over. When do people start returning back to the office? What is our short-term recovery plan? What's our long-term recovery plan? So all of these things you're going to see we're going to go over during this presentation, and make sure that you understand that it's not just IT that's part of your business continuance plan, even though it's a big part of what we do on a day-to-day basis, but there's a lot of other things involved in a really good business continuance plan for your corporation. So as you can see, threat assessment is a big part of what we need to plan prior to ever getting involved in a disaster. And as you can see, our threat assessment is based around a hurricane and fire are our two main things that we have to plan for. But then there's minor outages, things like power outages, phone outages, IT outages. We know that our servers never go down here, and I'm sure they never go down in your place of business. But, they're luckily short-term, and, they're not a big outage, but you still have to take a look at what your fallback position is. Internet outage, which is a big thing for us, ever since we went and done a lot of our communication now in the cloud. And then epidemics, things like, not just talking about the flu that could hit your business, but, any of these, the bird flus or any of these things, these epidemics that can actually hit not only our staff, but other people. So as you can see, if we're looking at the things that we have to plan for most of the time, which obviously is a hurricane, we got to put in the worst case scenario, the best case scenario, and the most likely thing to happen up there. So as you can see, we really look at three different areas. We look at probability, we also look at the duration of these disasters, and then the impact on our business. And as you probably know, anywhere like following Katrina or even Andrew down here many years ago, if we get hit with straight on with a Category 5, it can be catastrophic to us. It can take us months, if not years, to get back into the facility that, maybe got destroyed by a hurricane. So, the probability isn't that high, but it still can happen to us, and we still have to have those plans in place. But if you're taking a look at the most probable type of accident here in South Florida, you're looking at a hurricane like Wilma or like Francis that actually skirted us and took the power out, which is probably more than anything else. We really didn't have any damage done. But it's a high probability. It can take us out for days, if not weeks. And, the impact on our business isn't as major as catastrophic, but it still can, hurt our business. And then the most likely ones, which are the ones where we get maybe not hurricanes, but we'll get tropical depressions and things like that, that it can affect our business, affect communications, might affect power, and we have to plan for all those things. Obviously, with fire, that's not something we can plan for. We really don't know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, but it could take us out. Obviously, if our building burned to the ground, we could actually, be out for months, if not years again, until we rebuild the building to get back to normal business. But most likely it's going to be a very small fire that takes out a small amount. We're talking about minimal amount of damage and only a medium impact to our day-to-day business. And then, like I said, talking about things that can happen, pretty much any time, any day. As we all know, people run into the IT department and, the internet's down, or my network's not working, or I can't communicate. We get those things all the time, just like any normal business does. And, we got to obviously troubleshoot. Usually it's minor. But sometimes, a line can be cut. People are out there digging up trenches here in South Florida all the time. So, we could be out for a day or two if, just in case. We got to have some type of plans in place. What's our backup strategy and those type of things. So let's talk about the impact analysis done by department. This is a really crucial step to any type of business continuous plan. And I know that Bill and his staff worked tirelessly with our departments to make sure that we had in place what we needed to keep the business running. Is that right, Bill? And, you met with what? Mainly department heads, or who did you meet with, Bill?
Yeah, mostly the department heads, and we went through every function that they perform and how critical is it to the ongoing operation of the business, and gathered information primarily on how long could you afford to be out.
Right. And there's certain things in our company that we can't afford to have out at all, right? And there are other things where, shoot, if we're out for a week, it really doesn't cut into us being operational for our clients.
Right.
So it's really important that you set these goals when you're looking at this departmental impact analysis and getting together really the subject matter experts, as we all term them here in the IT industry, but it might be for accounts payable or accounts receivable, or, who deals with the bank, or, the facilities, or any of those things. It doesn't have to be strictly around IT. And then, obviously, you got to put together those people that are best able to answer those type of questions. For instance, if we can't process an order, we have customers, all over the East Coast of the United States that, let's be honest, need to get their IT equipment in place on schedule we got to make sure that those things aren't impacted as much as, let's say, not being able to collect the fees at the end, in a timely manner. So, we have to put those things that are actually business critical to us ahead of those things that are actually beneficial to the company. So, for instance, as you can see, tracking customer sales and other key business processes, we got to make sure those things are up and running. Each organization is going to be different. You could be a manufacturing plant where the key to your success is getting the plant back up and running, more important than getting the offices back up and running. So, by sitting down and bringing in the people, you can figure out the best ways to prioritize what the things you need to get done. And then once you put together that departmental impact analysis, then you got to look at the different departments inside your business and figure out what those key processes and functions are. And as you can see from this list, and this is just what we did here at Champion to make sure, but I'm sure your list can be much, much larger than what we did. So we got to look at competitive impact and the reporting back to our vendors. We partner with a lot of companies like IBM and HP and VMware and Microsoft and so on. And being able to report back to them on our status and what we're doing and how orders are getting placed is really, really important to our vendors and also to how we drive our business. And I'm sure it works that way with you and your partners that you work with. But as you can see right there in the middle, it's really important to make sure that you're talking to your financial institutions. So whether it be for payroll or whether it be for paying your bills to your vendors or whatever it is, if you guys have to shut down for any length of time, that's a very, very important part of your portfolio when you're talking about doing some type of business continuance study. And then IT, obviously, is a big part of what we're going to be talking about throughout the rest of this presentation. But we wanted to let you know that it isn't just IT, but we have to take into account a lot of the business operations that go on to make sure that the company is still up, is still running, is still making strides to keep things up and running. So, and then we got to talk about the timeline, which is really one of the more important things. Once a disaster is going to hit, the timeline can be shortened or lengthened depending upon the type of disaster that we're talking about. So as you can see, those threats where we have a lot of time, for instance, hurricanes, those we have time, we have 36, we maybe even have 72 hours where we can start making some decisions. But, if you're in a tornado belt or if you're in a flood zone or you're in some place where you get minimal amount of notice on what's going to happen, these timelines will shorten and lengthen depending upon the type of disaster we're talking about. But you still have to have them in place to know what the next step is once you go ahead and declare a disaster, what's step 1, what's step 2, step 3, and so on. You got to also consider the impact on your corporate employees. Not only, today we're kind of used to working out of the house or we're used to working remote. But a lot of our employees aren't. I mean, a lot of our employees are used to coming into the house, coming into the office, sitting down at their PC or sitting down at their job function and going to work. What happens if the office isn't available? What resources do they have at home that the corporation can actually use to give them access to those different things that they need to do their job? So having this type of impact analysis, knowing what's available from your employees is a key component when we're talking about how we can recover from a disaster, how we can still service our customers. And then we got to talk about the key business processes and critical objectives that really depict this timeline and its dependencies. So, for instance, if we need to ship orders, where do we need to be able to connect to? Not only to our partners out there, for instance, IBM or HP or any of our other vendors, but, you know, what trucking or freight companies do we have to be in contact with? Our customers, how do we stay in contact with them? So all these things have to be part of the plan, and I know a lot of them have to do with IT, but a lot of them have to do with also remote access into the disaster recovery location. And then we got to make sure that the impact to our facility, our key functions, is kept to a minimal amount, and make sure that when we're doing our risk assessments, that our migration strategies are part of that. So as you can see, this timeline is a really important key benefit to coming up with a really enterprise class business continuance plan. So let's talk about the project plan itself and how it actually works inside your corporation. So as you can see here, you have to have a method and a methodology to coming up with the different steps inside the plan, how you can go ahead and come up with policies and procedures that will actually work for your company, and then set up any type of governing routine that keeps these things fresh, and also as things change in your business, to be able to keep those changes upgraded. So, you know, you might put together a business continuance plan when you only had 5 remote offices and 100 employees. All of a sudden now you go to 20 remote offices and 500 employees. How does that affect your business continuance plan? So the plan that we put in place, or you put in place, has to be flexible enough to be able to add these things on the fly as you need them. And then you got to talk about the strategic recovery procedures for all departments. What do we need to bring up first? What branches or facilities or functions or personnel do we need to make sure are in a position to do their job? So, you know, those key people that need to be in either a remote location or have the ability to work from home. We need to review all the written documentation on an annual basis and come up with the reporting of those things, because, you know, from year to year in our business, different technologies come out that might make our business continuance plan obsolete really quickly if we're not taking into account all the new technologies that could play into a more efficient and more effective disaster recovery plan. And then we have to also make sure that, you know, if we need at least one alternative location to either house our critical applications or our people, that we have those locations on a temporary basis that are part of our queue of people to contact as we're starting to put into place our disaster recovery plan. So, and it doesn't have to be local either. So, I mean, we're talking about, I know that Bill, part of your disaster recovery plan is not only getting a location, but also finding hotels that are available in the area. Is that correct?
Right.
And also to those hotels.
Along the way, as they travel to the remote location.
Right, and then also what facilities are available in those type of locations, whether they have internet access or those type of things, correct?
Right, and I would also add to what you're talking about, Kevin, you talked about reviewing the plan each year, which is obviously important. Testing the plan is something we do every year as well. So that as our technologies change and we change our plan to accommodate the new technologies, we also are testing constantly.
It makes sense. You have to do that, or, you know, things might fall through the cracks.
Right.
All right, well, let's talk about the right tools. And, you know, this is something that Champion has developed, and we really developed a comprehensive business continuance add-on that plugs right into Microsoft SharePoint for those of you that are SharePoint customers. And this actually helps organizations with workflow and team collaboration. It's what we use here at Champion, like Bill said, to make sure that we update our disaster recovery and business continuance plan as new technologies or new applications be brought into our environment. So again, we have to have the tools that allow us to bring these things into the right area of our disaster recovery or business continuance plan. And we use SharePoint because not only does it allow us to build the forms, build the workflow, and build the documentation, but it allows our team to be able to work collaboratively around our disaster recovery plan on a daily basis, if not a quarterly basis when we meet every quarter. So this is something that we developed in-house. It's something that we offer to our customers as part of our consultation when we're talking to them about their business continuance plan. And it's not all just IT based. It's about what we're talking about here with all of the business things that we have to take into account, all the contact numbers that we need to be able to put into the forms. As you know, those contacts change, the way to update them. If you change banks, if you change insurance agents, if you have a colo out there that you switch from one to the other, or they changed employees at the co-location, the people that you need to contact, you need to have a centralized repository for all this information and be able to have people update this as things change inside your business continuance plan. So let's talk about the technology trends right now that are enabling an improved disaster recovery and business continuance plan. One of the biggest things that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years is virtualization. And as anyone that's put together a virtualization plan over the last couple of years, virtualization is one of the key points inside that plan to not only reduce your cost, but to help keep your RTO, or your recovery time objective, as low as possible, and then also to hit those recovery point objectives, or those RPOs, that are so important to the corporation. And I'm not just talking about server virtualization anymore. Now with the development of desktop virtualization and giving our employees the ability to have their desktop no matter where they are, whether it be in a co-location facility, whether it be working out of their house, or even, like Bill said, moving into a hotel near our disaster recovery backup site. You know, we have to be able to give those same tools to our employees no matter where they are. And virtual desktops is one of the means that we're using, and a lot of our customers are using, to help really smooth that transition between having a day-to-day workplace and working out of a less formal type environment. And then applications, you know, this is one of the things that a lot of people don't look at, is how can I get to things that have databases on the back end, or things that, you know, we used to drive from a client to a local server, and now we're talking about remote access to servers that, let's be honest, don't give us the same response time that we get in our production environment. So talking about virtualizing applications has been a part of our disaster recovery strategy for the last couple of years, but it's becoming more and more part of what people are looking at when we talk to them about their strategy. And then data replication. It's something that people take for granted, but a lot of our customers aren't actually sure how it can be done or which applications are best suited towards data replication. We talked earlier about RTOs and RPOs, or recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives for disaster recovery and business continuance. And as we all know, we have some applications that need to have a recovery point objective of very, very small amount of time between our production environment and between our disaster recovery environment. So those type of applications need some type of data replication where they can be almost in sync with the transactions that are happening in a production environment. But yet there are those applications that don't need that, you know, 2-second or 2 millisecond or 50 millisecond lag time between production and our backup locations. They can have, you know, an RPO of, let's say, 12 hours or even 24 hours for file servers or different applications. So coming up with those data replication strategies, depending upon the applications that we're talking about, is a big part nowadays of disaster recovery. We're not just talking about, you know, having a tape from yesterday's backup, going up to our DR site and basically restoring it. Your RPO could be as much as 24, 48 hours behind what your actual DR strategy is. And then we talked about this having continuously improving remote access. Nowadays, with so much out there, ways to get to the internet, ways to get into a cloud environment, having this ability to connect not with dial-in modems like when we first got involved. We all remember those digiboards out there with 24.4 modems or 14.4 modems where people would dial into for remote access. Nowadays, everything is handled over the internet or through some type of VPN connection. And then you also not only wired, but wireless. People that have Verizon cards or AT&T or any of these ISPs out there that offer, these cellular modems, we got to be able to take advantage of that type of technology to allow our employees, customers, and vendors the ability to get to the data they need to be able to keep our business up and running. Cloud computing, and I will tell you, we're going to talk about this quite a bit because it is really a key area now that a lot of our customers are now starting to build into their business continuance plans. It's only been available for a short time, so most people that have a business continuance plan already in place didn't have cloud technology or cloud computing available to them, and their strategy now has to be reworked to take advantage of the things that are out there. And then, like we talked about, collaboration and workflow with things like SharePoint are a big part of people's disaster recovery plans, and the ability to now kick off a plan, make sure that from a workflow standpoint, the notifications go out to not only our employees, but our vendors, our partners, and more importantly, our customers and clients, to let them know that, number one, we're still open for business. Number two, that we will be able to service their account. And just so they know we're in communication with them at all times on what's going on. So I'm sure it's the same thing with you and your business where, customers have to know that you're still open, that you're still viable. And to build these type of workflow and these type of collaboration into a solution so that, that's one of the things that will automatically kick off as you guys declare a disaster, and then keep your customers informed as things are happening in your environment, become uniquely positioned for your customers and your clients, and might make you a little bit different than the other vendors that they deal with. So let's talk about the ways that you can, right now, the options that are available to you for your business continuance. And as you could see, we label these 1 to 5, and these are really taking it from the most simplistic way through really the most up-to-date and most technically advanced way. So the way that most people, especially, we do a lot of surveys to our customers, especially our small to medium-sized business customers, still are using local backups as their means for business continuance or disaster recovery. So in other words, every night they go in, they back up their servers, they keep the tapes on site, and God forbid, one of their servers goes down or something happens where, they lose a bunch of servers or they lose a server. They have the ability to go to yesterday's backup, be able to restore their data, but their recovery time objective, obviously, how quick can they get in the hardware? How quick can they adapt their backups to that new hardware, which probably won't be identical to the servers that they backed up? How quick can they get a location to run them in? So, when we're talking about recovery time objectives, the local backup is a real stumbling block when it comes to that. Also, if it's, let's say, a fire, and it actually burns your building down, and your recovery tapes are in there, really tough to be able to recover when you don't have any medium to do it from. So then those people that move beyond that, their really next one is saying, okay, I'm still going to use tapes or some other type of media, whether it be now USB drives or whatever, but I'm going to move them off site. I'm going to get them into an Iron Mountain facility or some type of location that actually stores their backup tapes. And that's a great strategy because at least if you have a catastrophic failure at your point of business, you still have a means to get your data back. But again, we're talking about RTO and RPO again. How quick can I get my tapes out to the location? How quick can I get hardware to the location? How quick can I get my people online and get them back up and working? So again, it's an inexpensive way to do it. It's better than having nothing at all, but it's still something that we really need with all the technology that's out there today and the way that the prices are actually being driven down. There are better options, and as you can see, the online backup or the data replication is really the next point beyond using just tapes or some type of medium that can do a backup, whether it be now Blu-ray or whatever the other medium is. So for data replication, as you probably know, if you're using any type of large storage system, any type of SAN or NAS or any type of facility like that, there's data replication normally built into a lot of those products. It's a great option for you. It is more expensive because you have to have two of them to be able to replicate between like devices, but it's a much more viable option, especially when you're trying to predict your recovery time objectives and your recovery point objectives. Data replication is really the first solution that allows you to get a real accurate amount of time when it comes to your recovery time objective, and it will absolutely give you a recovery point objective depending upon your latency and when you have your data replication actually set up. And then your co-location obviously is one of the more expensive ones. It's also number 4 on the list, so it's one of the most technically advanced. And whether you have the ability to run it in your own facility or use some third party, that has rack space available for you that you can go ahead and rent and then put your own servers in there, this is a great option for you. It's a little pricey, but depending upon how important this data is and what your recovery time objectives are, co-locations are one of the best ways to do that that are available to you today. And it gives you the ability to not only test your, and this is really important, to test your disaster recovery or business continuance solution, but also keep it updated as you add on new applications and new employees or new locations. And then cloud computing is really one of the big areas that today a lot of our customers are now finding is a way to actually reduce their cost, improve their uptime, and actually allow them to do disaster recovery that they couldn't afford before. And it's mainly because of some of the things that cloud gives you, which is no capital expense at all, not having to go out and buy any of those servers that you'd have to put over in a co-location facility, not having to go out and buy any of the software that you need for those co-locations. So cloud computing actually allows you to do a lot of the things from even a production environment that just worked itself right into disaster recovery. And when I'm talking about cloud offerings, I'm actually talking about two different types of cloud offerings. I'm talking about community software. So for instance, things like email, things like collaboration, SharePoint that we talked about, live meeting like we're running today here, which happens to be running in the cloud for us. Also instant messaging so that you can communicate between your corporation, and then your CRM package. And all of these are very important to us as a corporation, as they probably are to you as a corporation. And Bill, if I remember, you told me right, didn't we, weren't we able to get rid of quite a few servers in our data center once we went to a community software package?
Right, we eliminated 6 servers, probably half a terabyte of storage. And I think if I could jump in and talk about a year ago, we had our mail and our instant messaging in a colo facility. So what we had to do was we had servers for those here in Boca, and we had servers for those at our DR site. We recently moved to a cloud solution, Microsoft Online, for email and instant messaging, live meeting, as Kevin mentioned. Now we don't have to have any of those servers, and really the DR, instead of seeing an event occurring and then having to go through your checklist to move mail from one server to the other, now we really don't have to do anything because it's in place already.
So then let me just make sure I understand what you just said, Bill. So we actually designed our production environment to enhance our business continuity environment.
Exactly.
Oh, well, and that's a strategy that a lot of our customers are now taking. So it kind of makes sense that, you know, if our production environment, if we can find a way to save money, number one, even in our production environment, but it also plays into high availability and disaster recovery, it's not a bad plan to have.
Right, and now it's at a reasonable price point.
Absolutely. So, and that's what we're talking about. And, you know, I know that, you know, we're doing it, and a lot of our customers are looking at cloud applications, not just the ones I mentioned there, but obviously companies like Salesforce.com, NetSuite, Google, all the applications that you can now get in the cloud. You got to think of it also as a way to now give your employees the availability of those applications without even having to worry about a disaster recovery plan for them. So let's talk about the second one is really Platform on Demand, which is an infrastructure as a service offering that we have, but it's also something you can get from a lot of different people. And what that really means to you is it gives you the ability to rent resources. You notice I didn't say buy. Rent resources when you need them. So you could see that, you know, I'm looking at this really infrastructure as a service like we looked at virtualization just a very short time ago, 5 or 6 years ago. I remember when Champion first got involved in disaster recovery, and virtualization, and we were talking to our customers about virtualization, and no one would put it in production. We'll try it, but we'll try it in test and development, mainly because they didn't know if it was going to work or not. And as you could see, if you take a look at our Platform on Demand or infrastructure as a service, the two main applications that we're actually have customers going into the cloud for are test and development and business continuance and disaster recovery. Mainly because it does not affect your production environment, but it gives you some of the things that you need to be able to run a much more efficient test and dev or disaster recovery environment. And as you can see, there's also things like web services and general workload applications that are out there. You can actually visit our championcloudservices.com site, which will give you a lot more information about that. But when we're talking about disaster recovery, here's just a quick demo I'm going to do of the solution that we have available for a platform on demand or really a self-service disaster recovery environment. As you can see, the picture in the background there is a cloud environment. In fact, it's our cloud environment running a test and development environment. That they also have resources set aside for disaster recovery that they can actually move to whenever they need them. In the bottom right-hand corner, you see 5 servers down there that we need to put up in the cloud for disaster recovery just in case our corporate infrastructure goes down. So what we actually do is set up replication between our local servers sitting here in our data center up to volumes that are up in our cloud environment. And as you can see, those are all managed by a single repository server so that we're using very, very little resources up in the cloud that we have to pay for on an ongoing basis. But our cloud has really almost an infinite amount of processor, memory, and storage available to us when we need it, but we only have to pay for it when it's actually in use. So as you can see, we're replicating all the time. We can use an MPLS network. We can use a VPN. We can use a whole bunch of different type of connectivity up into the cloud to keep our data in sync. Now, all of a sudden, a disaster hits. And whether it be a flood, whether it be a hurricane, whether it be a snowstorm, whatever, we can actually set in motion by turning off our by turning off our test and development environment, turning up our disaster recovery environment, take the data that's been replicated up into this cloud environment and actually start moving it over into and just doing again, replication into these virtual servers that are running in the cloud. And once they're done replicating, and it's a matter of minutes depending upon the amount of data we have to replicate, we can have an RTO of less than 30 minutes, a recovery time objective, with an RPO of less than 5. So, I mean, all these things play into there. And again, you're only paying for these resources in the cloud when you turn them on. You're paying just for a small amount of resources to be able to do the replication. The beauty of this plan is that once the disaster is over, so, you know, the power comes back on from a hurricane, or you can finally get back into your facility, then those servers that are up in the cloud can start replicating back all those changes that happened during that disaster and replicate them right back into your production servers. Or, God forbid, you had to buy new servers, you could actually then replicate all that data back into your new production environment. And depending, obviously, on how much data is there, we can do it while you're still running in the cloud, fail over a weekend or a night or whatever, and then all of your data is actually pushed back into production. Then you can go ahead and say, I need to start replicating again to the cloud to get ready for the next disaster. So as you can see, this is a really self-service disaster recovery solution that costs very, very little on a monthly basis, has no capital outlay whatsoever. You're not buying any software, you're not buying any hardware, you're not buying any infrastructure to put it into place. It is strictly a monthly reoccurring charge for the ability to run in the cloud. So for those corporations out there that are looking for a cost-effective way to do disaster recovery, cloud is an absolute necessity nowadays, and it's something that has not been available for any length of time in really a viable solution for our customers. So that's why we thought it was so important to bring this up in our webinar. As you can see, we have a bunch of these Tune-In Tuesdays scheduled now through September. And just, you know, we'll make sure that this is available, this presentation is available out on our website. Also, if you go to either championsg.com or championcloudservices.com, all of these dates and sign-ups are available to you to be able to attend any of these Tune-In Tuesday seminars.